stated by UNESCO, education is a human right, a public good, and a public responsibility. The United Nations General Assembly declared 24 January as the International Day of Education. They proclaimed this special day to honor and empower education in all the countries and to ensure that every young mind in the world can enjoy the benefits of rightful education. This year's theme is Changing Course, Transforming Education. Let's use this day as a platform to talk about how technology has significantly transformed the education sector and how it is building a more sustainable, inclusive, and peaceful future. Hi, my name is Roshni Mangnani and I am the host of this talk show. To discuss how the EdTech sector has emerged and changed the way people look at education, we have an expert speaker, Ms. Eva Brown. She views EdTech through the lens of an educator. She has been a classroom teacher, literacy and instructional coach, and an educational consultant. Today, she works as a customer success manager for an EdTech company, helping schools and districts maximize the benefits of the technology. She's also the author of the book, The Next Right Step, From Teaching to EdTech. It is a guide for educators who wish to transition to the EdTech industry. I'm really glad to have Ms. Eva joining this talk show and sharing her knowledge with us. To begin the discussion, let's talk about what is educational technology and how does it matter.
An EdTech company or an educational technology company is designed to be used by teachers around the world to support students with learning, to engage their students better, to personalize the learning, to gather data that can be used to better instruct the students and provide better instruction for those students. Really, it's designed to augment what the teacher is already doing in the classroom. So it's not designed to replace the teacher, but to give that teacher almost superhuman strength to be able to meet the needs of students. And there are thousands of EdTech companies that focus on different things. So some of those EdTech companies are creating learning management systems or LMSs, where students can go on to one place to access a variety of different EdTech platforms, and that eliminates the need to click into different open up different tabs and go to different places on the web. They can access everything right from one place. LMSs also will help gather data, collect grades, and so forth. Other EdTech companies focus in on specific aspects of learning. So it might be designed to augment the teacher's teaching of reading or math skills, or to help with reviewing or student engagement, where students can be engaged on a device in some way. We have a very tech-savvy young generation, and they enjoy getting on their devices. So a lot of these EdTech platforms or creations will be used to engage students. Some of the technology is focused on helping students or helping teachers provide students with better feedback so that the students can learn better as they are using the technology. So the real importance of EdTech comes in its ability to provide the teacher with additional support, to give that additional support to students. Ultimately, what the goal of EdTech is to increase learning and maximize student achievement.
That's completely true. The primary goal of EdTech platforms is to provide teachers with additional tools and support, and the students to achieve proper learning and education in one destination. Now, can you tell the viewers about how you are contributing to this industry?
Well, my role in EdTech started with me in the classroom. The EdTech business is really made up of three different industries: education, technology, and business. And I think anyone involved in EdTech started out in one of those three areas. Mine started in the classroom. I have taught students from age 7 all the way through age 17. I spent over a decade as a classroom teacher, and I really truly never meant to leave the classroom. I loved teaching. After several years as a teacher, I then transitioned into a role as an instructional and literacy coach. So my focus shifted at that point to helping teachers better leverage excellent teaching practices to help them help their students. And I worked within a school district and worked with just teachers in one school, my school in the district, and supported what they were trying to do with their students. And that opened up a whole new world to me, because as a classroom teacher, you're somewhat isolated. You're often not able to see what other teachers are doing in their classes. You don't really have a good sense of whether or not what you're doing in the classroom is truly working until you can see what other teachers are able to do. So when I became a coach, I realized I had a lot to learn still as a teacher. And I spent a number of years as a coach within my district, and that's really where I learned more about high leverage teaching practices than I had ever known before. The reason I left the classroom entirely and the schools entirely was, at the time, I was given the opportunity through an educational publisher to begin doing some consulting or coaching work around teaching and around these teaching practices, especially around teaching practices for reading. I have my master's degree in teaching reading. And so I was given an opportunity as a part-time work to support other teachers in the southeast part of the United States with some of the practices that they were using a specific curriculum from an educational publisher, EdTech company. And after I did that for a number of years, I was at a point in life where my family and we thought we were going to be moving from where we currently were. And I transitioned into a role that I knew I could take anywhere in the world with me. And that was this role as a consultant for this educational publishing EdTech company. And again, just learned so much during that time. And then through that, I did that for about a decade. And I now work for a small EdTech startup. And I've held a number of different roles over the past decade working with educational publishing and EdTech. A lot of it was around content and training and coaching of teachers who were using this technology to get better results from their students, to really help their students learn, and not just to remediate, but to accelerate the learning. The goal is not to just catch up. The goal is to really accelerate the learning so that the student captures that joy of learning and realizes that they're able to do the learning that is being put in front of them. So much of my work over the past decade revolved around helping teachers leverage the technology that they had to maximize student achievement. In the past year, during the 2020 school year, I, like so many people in the EdTech industry, when schools shut down in March of 2020 around the world, I was laid off from that position that I'd had for 10 years. Nobody was going into schools at the time. And so a lot of people working in that consulting business were laid off. And in the process of searching for a new job, which I was then able to found, I networked and met a lot of different teachers. One of the things I'm finding is that teaching is so stressful here in the United States, but around the world, in many places around the world. It's such a stressful vocation now that unfortunately many teachers are choosing to leave the profession. Some statistics have it at 1 out of every 3 to 1 out of every 5 teachers leave the profession within the first 5 years of entering. And what I found was that a lot of teachers began reaching out to me to ask me, how do I get into the EdTech world? And so I started working with teachers and speaking with teachers who wanted to get into EdTech, and ended up writing a book to help them, support them as they were making this transition. I think one of the key things that's really important for us to remember, those of us in the EdTech field, is that the EdTech business really needs people from all 3 of those backgrounds, from education, from technology, and from business. And really, teachers are needed in EdTech because they have the understanding of the practice that needs to be there for these EdTech tools to really achieve the goal of increasing student achievement. Without the perspective of educators, without the perspective of people who've really studied all of this different educational theory and then put it into practice, a lot of our EdTech platforms are not going to deliver what they promise if they don't include educators' theory and practice and experience in that. And so my involvement has really been around helping teachers make that transition into the EdTech arena.
You've had a fascinating journey, starting from being a classroom teacher to now guiding teachers to transition to the EdTech space. Can you share some highlights of your book, The Next Right Step?
The book I wrote is called The Next Right Step, From Teaching to EdTech. And I wrote it after many conversations with teachers who were trying to figure out how to make that move into the EdTech sector. Unfortunately, there's so much data showing that teachers are trying to leave the education world, the classroom itself, because of the stress. And the book was designed to help them make that change. You know, teachers have so many skills, and many of those skills are transferable to the corporate world, but there's still a lot to learn. There's a lot that they need to know. The language is different from a classroom environment to a corporate environment. And to be able to interview for and then succeed in obtaining a role in the EdTech industry requires that teachers be able to speak to that role. So my book was designed to help them with that. It's not designed to get every teacher to leave the classroom. I certainly don't want that. We need excellent teachers to stay right where they are. But if they have a heart to move into the EdTech industry, I want them to reflect on why. Why do they want to make that move? And then to reflect on their strengths, because not every EdTech company will be a good fit for every teacher. And not every teacher will be a good fit for every role within EdTech. So the book is designed to help them think through what are their strengths, where would they be a good fit, whether it's as a customer success manager or as an account manager or project manager, or an instructional designer or content writer or consultant. You know, what do those different roles mean, and what do they have to offer in those roles, and how can they gain the skills for those roles? And it's also designed to help them think about how can they prepare for a role like that right where they are, because it's going to take a while. There's a lot of positions open within the EdTech world, but there's a lot of people who are trying to get into that sector. And so it might take a little bit longer than they anticipate to be able to make that move. In the meantime, how can they grow right where they are to enable them to make that move later? So I cover everything in there from what are these different roles, to how do you prepare for the roles, what might some of the interview questions be, how can you prepare for that, while also balancing it with what are some ways that they can still grow right where they are in the education industry itself. And my goal for that book is to really be able for each teacher to make their own next right step, whatever that might be, in their profession.
I understand the amount of experience it takes before you can write a book or guide someone in a particular field, and that experience is not always rosy. Can you tell me about the challenges you face in the EdTech sector and how you overcome them?
I think there are a lot of challenges within the EdTech sector that maybe people don't realize are there. I think one of the biggest challenges is that technology is changing so quickly, and this industry is changing so quickly. What was created 10 years ago is no longer relevant today. And so the need to stay relevant, not only with the content, but also with the technology, is an incredible challenge for, I think, all EdTech companies. Another challenge within the EdTech industry is that it's a very global industry. And what even just here within the United States, you have 50 different states, and there are 50 different sets of possible standards. Some states are using the same standards than others, but in general, you have different needs just within the United States around what standards are met and the content that's part of those standards. And then when you transfer that to a global environment, and you're trying to create an EdTech platform that will work globally, there are a lot of things to consider. Different people around the world are using different devices. Different people around the world have access to different levels of technology. There are some parts of the world, even here in the United States, there are some parts of the United States where not everybody has easy access to high-speed internet. And that can make the equity of delivery of EdTech to students very difficult and very challenging. So I think keeping up with the pace of the change in technology is a challenge. I think making sure that what is being created is equitable to all students is a challenge. I think another challenge of EdTech, quite honestly, is that the technology changes faster than the school system. We are working with technology that is constantly improving, constantly getting better, and yet trying to deliver that to a clientele where in many cases the school systems do not have the money to keep up with the changes of the technology. And we're working with, in some cases, individuals who may not have the experience with the technology and the comfort level with the technology. There are different levels of technological know-how when you're looking at different teachers. Some are very skilled and very capable, and they have a great understanding and a great love for using technological projects or programs. Other teachers really do not. They are more comfortable with the paper pencil books. And so to try to create something that's easy to use for all teachers, relevant for all teachers, and also equitable, able to be accessed by students on a phone or a PC or a Mac or any device in between. These are all challenges that EdTech companies have to face. And for me personally, the learning that I have taken part in over the years, being involved in different aspects of EdTech, I have grown so much more and have to grow every single day more quickly than I ever have had to before, because things change so quickly in this industry. And so just trying to keep up with those changes of, all of the different technology that's coming out, where we are now is not where we're going to be in 2 years. And so creating something that will be able to change and be able to stay relevant is a challenge within the EdTech industry.
I completely agree. This industry has been evolving so quickly, and every time there's a different trend. What, according to you, were the EdTech trends witnessed in 2020-2021?
The year 2020 was a pivot year for everyone in education. I think the entire world shut down on one day in March of 2020 because of COVID, and learning shifted to online for the most part for students around the world. And that led to a lot of changes and a lot of trends within education and education technology. I think, of course, one of the biggest trends of the 2020-2021 school year was the development and sudden ubiquitous use of e-learning, where courses were delivered online. There was a lot of variety being offered. There was some quick, easy access to different online tools. Parents who suddenly found themselves being kind of homeschooling their students were able to give them additional courses that they could take online. But teachers were also using these synchronous and asynchronous learning became a big trend within the 2020-2021 school year, where teachers would provide synchronous learning through live sessions with their students, in most cases through web conferencing tools. In some cases, teachers were back in the classroom, maybe part-time with students, or in very rare cases, maybe full-time. But they would provide these live synchronous lessons for students, but then support them with some sort of asynchronous learning where the students could go on to an online course or do something outside of right with that teacher to support their learning. And so that was a big trend within the 2020-2021 school year. Some of the other trends that kind of came out of that school year were the lessons that were video assisted lessons or used virtual reality or augmented reality to make the lessons come more alive. More and more teachers were discovering sort of these animated videos that they could use to provide their students with a better understanding of a concept that they were teaching. Students were no longer allowed to take real field trips, so they were taking virtual field trips to ancient Egypt or to any place really. They were walking among dinosaurs or among the catacombs of Rome, or all these different places around the world that they could do through virtual reality or augmented reality, depending on the technology available to them. Gamification was and still is a big trend in education. Gamification is all of those little things that we see when we're on an app on our phone and they try to keep us engaged by, having confetti drop from the sky, or by giving us virtual awards or rewards of some way. Trying to incentivize and motivate students to stick with the learning and to have fun while engaging in the learning was a big trend during the last school year. Some other areas that were trends within the 2020 school year, because of this sudden influx of students and teachers around the world using these platforms, businesses really had to think about the use of data and how they were going to make that data more accessible, more translatable to teachers so that teachers could take that data and really use it with their students. They also needed to think about how, as a company, they were going to store that data and protect that data and be able to use that data for the teachers to improve the instruction, to personalize the instruction. And then I think probably another big trend that we've seen over the last year is the use of artificial intelligence. This can be done in a number of different ways through making tasks that teachers normally have to do on their own, like grading, automating that a little bit more so that to save teachers time. So artificial intelligence might be more involved in grading of students' work. But there's also the other side of it where students are being engaged by an artificial intelligence tutor, an AI tutor of some sort, to support what the teacher is trying to teach them. If they maybe need some additional reading support, if they need some more math support, having this AI tutor coming alongside them to provide that support. Again, not to replace the teacher, but to strengthen and augment what the teacher is trying to do in the classroom. So I think those were some of the biggest trends of this past year. Moving forward, I personally think one of the big trends we are going to see and we need to see is a focus on social emotional learning that's built into these EdTech platforms. Here in the United States, suicide is the second leading cause of death among teenagers. There is research that shows that 20%, 1 out of every 5 students in America suffers from some form of mental illness, whether it be depression, anxiety, to bipolar disorder, 1 out of 5. And 1 out of 4 students has experienced some form of trauma in their lives. When you couple that with the isolation that has occurred over the past year, the mental health crisis in America has skyrocketed, and I would dare to say all around the world has skyrocketed. And so I think a lot of what we're seeing in the education arena is that the isolation of these students from one another during the 2020-2021 school year has really set them back. And, differentiation in education, this ability to personalize instruction has been kind of the holy grail of education for decades. But we have to also remember that learning is a very collaborative thing. We learn better when we talk together, when we engage each other in the learning. And that's been very difficult to do while students are all isolated at home. And so I think building in some more social emotional awareness and tools, helping students not only be incentivized through gamification, but maybe also including some of the psychology of learning is going to be key, that we build in some resiliency and better means of motivating, self-motivation for learning, I think is going to be important going forward. And that we also consider how we can have students collaborating, even if they continue to learn from home. We do see more students continuing that model now of maybe choosing a blended learning where they're learning somewhat in school and somewhat at home, but building in abilities to collaborate with other students, to engage and discuss that learning is really crucial, and I think will be a trend that we see going forward. And I also think continuing to look at how data is being used, that's going to be something that we're constantly focusing on within EdTech, because the more EdTech is able to do, the more data it has. And it has to be able to take that data and use that data in a very ethical way to make sure that teachers have what they need, but students are also being protected, that their privacy is being protected. So I think those are some things that we're going to be looking at as we move forward in the EdTech sector.
There were surely a lot of changes and trends observed in the education sector because of the worldwide lockdown, but it definitely gave more people access to remote education in all the domains. Do you believe that COVID-19 acted as a catalyst in the growth of the EdTech sector?
COVID was definitely a catalyst in the continued growth of EdTech, but the EdTech industry has been doing very well for quite some time now. In 2012, there's a study that was published by The Atlantic that shows that in 2012, the EdTech industry was valued at just over $8 billion. So that was about a decade ago. By 2019, pre-COVID, that value had grown almost tenfold. It was now valued at about just over $76 billion. So COVID definitely helped to continue the growth of the EdTech sector, but it had already been growing as technology was being used more and more by students, by teachers, by schools, as there were more, as schools around the world were able to incorporate computers and laptops, and as that technology got cheaper and more accessible for students around the world, EdTech was able to build in those platforms starting much earlier. So I think when COVID hit, because there was already a really strong foundation for these EdTech platforms, teachers were able to pivot to online teaching in a way that would not have happened if it didn't already have almost a decade of growth prior to COVID-19. Now, some teachers found that pivot more difficult than others, depending on their own use of technology, but the basis of what was needed to allow that pivot to online learning to happen in March of 2020 had already been built. That foundation was there. So I definitely think that 2020 year helped to grow and accelerate the growth of EdTech. The value of EdTech industry in 2020 was valued at about $89.5 billion. So it does continue to grow, but I don't think COVID was what launched it. It was launched almost a decade ago by the growth of technology as an industry and then the incorporation of technology into classrooms. The vision for what technology could do for education, that vision was launched about a decade ago, or probably even more, when they were rolling in video cassettes into classrooms back in the 80s. People have known what technology could provide to education for a very long time. And I think I'm very grateful that foundation was there for March of 2020, because I think that foundation is what allowed education to continue really during that pandemic year.
The EdTech sector, as you stated, surely has a strong foundation and is expected to grow up to 218 billion US dollars by the year 2027. Do you think the EdTech sector will continue to see as much growth post-pandemic?
Yeah, EdTech is not going anywhere over the next decade, or really, I cannot see a time where the EdTech industry is not going to continue to grow, even though students are more and more back in the classroom now. There's a couple of reasons for that. Technology continues to become, to grow and expand. The uses for technology are growing and expanding daily and changing daily. Students have more access to technology. Technology is becoming cheaper. The internet is spreading, so more and more students around the world have access to the internet now. And because of what we've seen technology able to do, that this blended learning approach of combining face-to-face instruction with asynchronous instruction through technology really does yield better student results. I don't think we can go back from that. The data is there and we know that it works. So I don't think that recovery from the pandemic is going to hinder the growth of the EdTech sector at all. As a matter of fact, the compound annual growth rate is estimated to be 19.9% through the next 6 to 8 years in the EdTech sector. So it's going to continue to grow tenfold, 20-fold over the next 8 to 10 years. And I think that's really exciting for those who are in the EdTech industry, for teachers who are trying to find better ways to help students learn and to take all of this amazing educational theory that we have as educators that individually, a solo teacher on their own cannot possibly do everything that they need to do to be able to meet the needs of every student. But when they are armed with these incredible technological tools that can provide their students with some personalized instruction, differentiated instruction, that where we can build in more resiliency and motivation, make learning fun, give them the ability to see things that they couldn't ever see before because there's no way they could travel to the other side of the world. I think it's really going to change the way that students engage with the world and continue to change the way that students engage with the world and set us up for a more global understanding of education and a better appreciation for people around the world, because access to people on the other side of the world, it's no longer a problem. You just pick up the phone or you get on a Zoom or a Google Meets, or you engage these individuals on a platform that didn't exist when I was a child. And so I think we're going to see this industry continue to grow and continue to be used in conjunction with educational theories and pedagogy to make our 21st century learners have that understanding and ability that maybe didn't exist in the past because that technology was not there.
The increasing use of digital technology is helping students gain knowledge. Learners are progressively shifting towards ebooks that can be accessed online from anywhere across the world. Also, digital content can be relatively easier to generate than printed content, and digital books can also be easily translated into different languages and be retrieved by a broader user base. EdTech has been a great help, particularly with people with physical disabilities. They can listen to the educational content in an audio format to gain knowledge about the things they are interested in. EdTech solutions in line with the advancements of artificial intelligence, Internet of Things, augmented and virtual reality will contribute considerably to the market growth. I also have a bonus tip for all the entrepreneurs and educators who wish to transition to the EdTech industry. Have a strong team of people, especially from the education, technology, and business domains, also highlighted by Ms. Eva, since these are the 3 core things required for this business to become a success. Additionally, if you intend to invest in the EdTech sector, having the right team and capital is not enough. Getting in-depth market insights is a must. We, at Infinium Global Research provide high-quality market research reports that highlight the key investment areas in the market. It does not only help you to understand the competitive landscape, but also make strategic business decisions to achieve your business goals. I would again like to thank Ms. Eva for sharing her experience and insights in this talk show. Also, thank you to all the viewers. I hope you gained some worthwhile knowledge in this video. I'll see you next time with a different market analysis of your interest. Stay tuned with Infinium Global Research, keeping up with the market trends.